Dr. David Ndii has got a very interesting, indeed very fascinating prediction on how the current DP Ruto versus President Uhuru Kenyatta or versus the handshake battle will end. Now, if you've been following Dr. David Ndii closely, in what he says and what he writes, in newspaper columns and so on and so forth, you will know that his predictions on Kenya have always been spot on. This is a man who predicted correctly the troubles the deputy president is going through back in 2015. And in a way, he also predicted the handshake. So any prediction he has now for what is going to happen, in this battle that has held Kenyans on the edge of their seats, you have to take the man seriously. In fact, I'm willing to stick out my neck and put my money on David Ndii's predictions. I'm very sure the two scenarios he has predicted will come to pass. I will give you those mind-boggling predictions at the tail end of this video. First, let's talk about the forum where Dr. David Ndii was speaking. By the way, ignore all the background noise. It's raining, and rain is a blessing, and there are no apologies to make about rain. Yes, Dr. David Ndii was being hosted in the latest, very informative, very entertaining, the top political show in town at the moment. Tony Gashoka's Point Blank show on KTN News every Wednesday. In my view, as far as politics go, TG has nailed it. TG, of course, stands for his initials, Tony Gashoka. And you guys know I don't recommend something for nothing. I would highly recommend anybody interested in Kenyan politics, don't miss the latest show. It's available right here on YouTube. Point Blank, KTN's Point Blank. Very interesting show. Now I have to point out, and this is very interesting, that during this show, Tony Gashoka, the host, was uncomfortable. Watch the show, you'll clearly see it in his body language. And I don't blame him. I'll tell you why. David Ndii is a great mind. He's a great Kenyan mind. I mean, that guy is so sharp. Interviewing such a character is not easy. When you're listening, and trying to understand what such an intelligent mind has to say, it can be quite challenging. I myself, when listening to Bwana Ndii, I have to be very careful. And many times I stop and rewind. So that I'm sure I understand what the man is really saying. But all in all, Bwana Ndii gave us plenty of mind-blowing nuggets in this Point Blank show. Nuggets that will help anybody understand exactly where the country called Kenya is in right now. Of course, the thing that has gained most publicity from this show is Ndii saying that corruption has been weaponized. It has been used as a weapon, and the main objective is to completely finish and destroy Deputy President William Samoei Ruto. The world-renowned Economist says that that is not the way to fight corruption. Now, there's a very interesting story told, very fascinating. Ndii was in a room somewhere with somebody who is very close to Uhuru Kenyatta, very close to the administration. And this person was asked a question by an old woman. You know, life is such that you get to a certain age where truth becomes your friend. Reality becomes your friend. And really you have no choice, because you no longer have anybody to impress. Your image, is cast in stone. At this age it cannot be changed. So you become real. So what this woman asked this person close to the president was a very simple question. She asked, why did you people cheat William Ruto? Mwahenire Ruto neke. My Kikuyu is very rusty, yeah, but I can imagine that is the way the question was asked. And the man who was asked this question went silent. He had absolutely no answer. Now, of course, Ndii ended up putting the situation very in perspective, yeah, and explaining it so completely that a standard 2 pupil would understand. Yeah, I mean, it was profound. I know it's not a very good thing to praise another human being, yeah, but truth has to be told. This is a brilliant mind. Now, just a quick aside. When you take in the show, you might get the impression that Bwana Gashoka was interrupting David Ndii too much. Now, I just want to point out quickly why that is not true. You see, when you have a show like this one, your biggest enemy is something called time. And you want to get as much information out there within a very short space of time as you possibly can. So it is a good idea, once the point has come out, to interrupt. And this is exactly what Bwana Gashoka was doing. Anyway, that's my view. Now, the way Ndii put it is like this. For you to become president of Kenya today, you need support from powerful quarters. To quote Ndii verbatim, he said, you need tainted people to get into power. So now you've gotten into power. What do you do with these tainted people? And of course, they won't go away. How? In getting into power, there were deals made. There were understandings. Yeah, when you get into power, this is what you're going to do for us. We're doing this for you now. When you get into power, utatufanyia hii na hii na hii. Yeah? So Ndii took us to 2015. Yeah, he could hear what was happening in the inner circle. Yeah, he had whispers here and there. And I need to repeat, this was 2015, barely 2 years after the Jubilee administration came into power. And he says there was a lot of anti-Ruto, yeah, rhetoric at that time. Yeah, complaints about the corruption that was being done in the DP Ruto camp. However, those people who were complaining against DP Ruto were not clean. They're also involved in their own corruption. In fact, Ndii says it was not corruption, it was fraud. Now, we all know Kizungu ilikuja na meli. English came with the ships. Yeah. However, we should all be able to know that fraud is much more serious than corruption. Both are crimes, but fraud is advanced. So Ndii calls it fraud. Yeah. And he says very clearly this fraud was taking place on both sides of the table. But there was one side of the table that was bitterly complaining against corruption from the other side of the table. Now, according to Ndii, the only difference was the table manners. They were both eating from the same table, yeah, dining on the same table. And the only difference between the two sides, yeah, they're both eating, but the only difference is table manners. What? I'm sure you can all picture people eating on one table, yeah, and one side calls themselves polished, yeah, so they use a fork and a knife, yeah, and they don't put the knife in their mouth. You never put the knife in your mouth, yeah, the fork is the one you put in your mouth. And of course, they're using a napkin, yeah, to keep on wiping their mouths as they eat. But the other side, these people are chewing loudly. And then you ask them something, and they respond. They reply with food still in their mouth. They start talking, so you can see the half-chewed food in their mouth as they're talking back to you. And sometimes you say something funny, and they laugh with the food in their mouth. You know, the laugh of the laugh of the rich. And you can see the food in their mouth. This is what Ndii meant by table manners. And he further says that it was very clear when the Jubilee government was formed that the foundation of that marriage that created Jubilee was a marriage of convenience to fight the ICC cases. And so, What did Kenyans expect once the ICC cases were dealt with? Naturally, there was no way that marriage was going to continue. That should be very obvious. That's human nature. And very critical, extremely critical, according to Ndii, and I fully agree with him. In Jubilee coming into power, Chapter 6 of our Constitution was thrown out of the window. You know, Chapter 6 deals with the qualification of leadership in Kenya. And I'm not talking about university degrees. Yeah, I'm talking about ethics. Because if we are to follow Chapter 6 to the letter, if you have ever been tainted by corruption, let alone having a case going on in an international court, then there's no way you can be on the ballot. Period. So according to Ndii, in 2013, instead of soaring above the bar, the bar we had put ourselves, for the threshold for somebody to be considered for a leadership position, we went under the bar. And that was the genesis of very many serious problems we are facing in our country today. There was another very major point this world-renowned economist made related to this. He said the greatest tragedy in Kenya is that after passing our 2010 constitution, we did not immediately go into a general election. Because had we done that, the real champions of a better Kenya, the real champions of a new dispensation would have swept into power. No doubt about that. But instead, we made the tragic mistake of a long lull before the elections, which gave time to those who are opposed to the new constitution to regroup, and scheme and find ways and means of fighting this new constitution. And that is why today the country called Kenya has a very serious crisis in its hands. This thing did not start during the 2017 general elections, and indeed presidential elections. It started immediately we passed the constitution. We made a tragic error. We made a mistake. And the result is we put into power those who were opposed to the new constitution, opposed to the new Kenya. Wah. This was quite a show, guys. Quite a show. Now, David Ndii also said one of our major shortcomings is that we have refused to make elections work. What did he mean? We shall deal with that immediately after the upcoming commercial break. You don't want to miss this. Welcome back. Now, Dr. David Ndii can also be cheeky, very cheeky. During the interview, he suddenly stopped and asked TG, Tony Gashoka, a question. Now, when you're being interviewed, you can, during the course of your talking, you can ask a question and then you answer it yourself. So I think this is what Gashoka was expecting. But Ndii asked the question and then stopped. Waited for an answer from Bwana Gashoka. And the question is, in Africa, we have just come out of 2 presidential elections. Then he asked Gashoka, which elections were those? Now, in my view, during a live show, that is a punch under the belt. Your mind is programmed to ask questions, not to think and answer questions. And then suddenly, the person you're interviewing turns the table and asks you a question. Bwana Gashoka was in trouble. But he quickly recovered and he said one of those countries is Nigeria. And then he can't remember the other country. Now, I believe this is the point David Ndii was trying to drive home. Because how many of you, let's be very honest, remember or are aware that there was actually a presidential election in Senegal? Very few. But everybody knows there was an election in Nigeria. Why? Because Nigeria is similar to Kenya in many ways. There were manenos after those presidential elections. People saying, oh, there was rigging, oh. In fact, even the elections were postponed. Who postpones presidential elections? Gosh, nani aliroga Africa? We have many problems in Africa. Anyway, the point David Ndii was driving home is that Senegal is one of the very few countries on our continent that have managed to sort out something extremely critical, which Ndii called the transfer of power. When you have sorted out the transfer of power, then it becomes very easy. You can have an election. Nobody will even know you had a presidential election. In sharp contrast to a country like Kenya, when you know that the presidential elections are next year, you start, unaanza kujipanga. Change your children's school, take them to a school abroad. Close your business in the Rift Valley, until after the elections, etc., etc. According to Ndii, we have deliberately refused to deal with this transfer of power manenos. What is transfer of power, really? Now, Ndii gave us a very good explanation of this. He said, for instance, in a monarchy, there's no problem with transfer of power because you already know when the king dies, his eldest son or his eldest daughter will take over. And if those ones are not available, the next in line will take over. So what happens here, what happens in this case, is that the public is insulated against the tensions that would ordinarily come with the transfer of power. Those tensions will not go outside the palace. They'll remain within the palace, where members of the same family can poison each other in the fight for power. The other scenario is, of course, a democracy, where you have an election. And if you don't sort out your transfer of power, this is something that will come back later to eat you. And he gave examples of Mobutu Sese Seko and other people who did not deal with this. Sooner or later, the public will rebel, rise up against you. And power will be transferred in a most brutal manner. So it's extremely important, both for the leaders and even the country and the people and everybody, for every country to sort out its transfer of power manenos. This was quite an eye-opener of a show, quite an eye-opener of an interview with Dr. David Ndii, who, although is a world-renowned economist, I consider him the sharpest political analyst we have in the country at the moment. He understands the country very well. The history of the country, he also understands it very well. In my view, this is the most important political show that has ever happened on our shores in recent times. Because as a country, we have reached that place where Kenyans must sober up. Even on this channel, where we believe or want to persuade ourselves that we are much more aware than other Kenyans, we still have people in the DP Ruto camp. We still have people supporting the handshake camp. We still have firm radical supporters of President Uhuru Kenyatta, and the same for Raila Odinga. But the truth is, that will not help us as a country. If we want to build our country, with our children in mind and our great-grandchildren in mind, if we want to build a better Kenya, we have to get very quickly away from worshipping personalities, especially political personalities. In other words, we the people are the problem. It's not our politicians. And because we are the problem, whenever an election comes around, it's very easy for politicians to come and take advantage of us. Ndii pointed out that, for instance, at the moment, there are strong anti-Kikuyu undercurrents, which a politician campaigning for power can come and take full advantage of. And I guess he meant both ways. That is, somebody can come and rally all the Kikuyus behind him for his own political end. Or somebody can come and rally the entire country against a community, for their own gain. And of course, we're all aware that there's a very strong current, anti-Kalenjin current in the country at the moment, which again can be used in the same way. Now, this is very important to note. While somebody is rallying us around them based on tribe, etc., etc. Nobody talks about the issues. Nobody addresses the problems facing Kenya today. And some of them are very basic: running water, hospitals, etc., etc. And most of all, nobody will address corruption. Indeed, what will happen is that the side that has been more successful in hiding the corruption they're doing will rally the nation behind them and tell the people that they're clean. And since we all want to fight corruption, the other people who are less successful in hiding their corrupt ways are the bad people. They're the bad guys. But guess what will happen as soon as we elect these clean guys into office, clean in quotes? You can be sure we'll just slide back into the old ways. Huyu anakula hii, huyu anakula hii. It's our turn to eat. Corruption through and through. I'm really looking forward to the day, if it ever comes, that Kenyans will do the right thing. And that is send the entire political class home. And then whoever gets elected, irrespective of what tribe they come from, or how rich or poor they are, whoever is elected is clearly told by the people, we're watching. But I guess those are just one of Kumekucha's many pipe dreams. Now, as promised, this is what Ndii predicted is going to happen with the DP Ruto Manenos. He says that most probably what will happen is that after the dust settles, the two parties will sit down and compromise, reach a truce and compromise, and find some middle ground where they can both exist peacefully. But that will be after the clause and the power of the deputy president has been neutralized. The other scenario, and to quote his exact words, is that everything could go horribly wrong. Until next time, this is Chris Kumekucha.